In the old days, you could send a news release and you probably get some coverage or at least a phone call. You just can't do that anymore. Like newsrooms are shrinking. There's less resources to cover a variety of topics. We're more driven towards what's going viral or, unfortunately, who's dying that day. So you really got to stand out from all that.
In today's world online, customers and everybody expect personalized support on every channel and in every way. They want it done right now. But the problem is most solutions out there don't allow that to happen. They're not delivering. So your customer service reps are struggling to stay productive. And your customers, honestly, just aren't as happy as they probably once were. Now's the time to change that. This is exactly why there's a new AI-powered service hub from HubSpot. The Service Hub actually allows you to bring this type of level of service and success together for the first time so you can deliver on the expectations that people are expecting. And actually, it's boosting revenue along the way. The reps that are using Service Hub from HubSpot right now are reporting 13 times faster to help them resolve tickets. And also, it helps them close something like 42% more tickets per day. So that basically means that you're also retaining people at a much higher rate. They're saying more than 80%. Not only that, you're getting this full 360 view of your customers in this smart CRM that basically helps and supports you in the marketing, sales, and service delivery and success of your team, but also making the experience much better for your customer, which boosts your revenue and your business growth. Go and visit HubSpot.com/service to learn how this all new solution can help you deliver for your customers. Are you interested in getting some PR? And I'm not talking about some little basic PR. So I'm just talking about getting on the news, getting on TV, getting published in magazines or wherever that you think you should be placed and get that kind of that feature, whatever you think that you should get featured, leverage that PR in a smart way. Well, I brought in a friend of mine. I've known him for over 20 years. His name is Brandon LaVorgna. And this guy is, so in this gap in time since I've known him from those days to now, he was in the media. He was a reporter. He was reporting on all these different big events in our country. He was working the news desk and working with people who were pitching to get in the media, and he understands the game and what it takes to get featured on TV in other publications in busy markets. And I'm not just talking, random blogs somewhere, but really leveraging legitimate media that is seemingly pretty difficult to get into. Well, he's walking you through the step-by-step approach on how to do that and to look like a rock star, which you are, and the expert, the authority that the media is going to call on to get featured on the news and in TV, online, wherever that you want to get featured. You're now going to have a playbook that Brandon walks you through to go and make that happen. So Brandon's the man. I love this guy, and he's so open and transparent. You're going to love him as well. So let's get into it right now. We reconnected recently at Social Media Marketing World, and immediately, I was like, this is why you're going to crush it, because you've made this transition from media and news to now consulting, but really it's you're the strategy behind people now, and you're out in the Phoenix area, but you're working with folks all over the place, I believe.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. I was telling someone I've been to 48 states, and it really dawned on me how much land I've covered in a short amount of time that most people don't do in a lifetime. But yeah, I went to college in Pennsylvania, go Edinburgh Fighting Scots, and got my first job in Casper, Wyoming, where, I happened to be near Aurora during the time of the Aurora shooting. So I got some really good exposure to national media and kind of how they work at that point, made a lot of good connections down there and stayed in contact with those people as mentors and just people to really follow and try to grow into in a sense. And then I jumped after 2 years of being a weekend anchor and kind of leading the weekend crew and being a general assignment reporter in Wyoming, covering literally anything from, Jackson Hole, where you have all that wildlife, to politics, was really interesting. It's a very boom and bust kind of state, so that was always intriguing to me. And from there, I really lucked out and landed a gig in Savannah, Georgia, where Georgia politics are quite crazy. Being right there on the port, you never know what's going to happen too. We just saw what happened, unfortunately, over Maryland this week. But was around when Charleston church shooting happened. That's why a media plan, which we'll get into here in a minute, is so important because you just never know. I mean, on the day that Charleston church shooting happened, I was supposed to be at a fundraiser. Next thing I know, I'm headed up towards Charleston, where a gunman is allegedly on the loose still after, shooting all those people in a church. Covered a lot of politicians that way, Nikki Haley, pretty much every presidential candidate, and every president we've had recently. Really lucked out, kept growing in my media career, went up to Greensboro, North Carolina into a top 50 market, which was a goal of mine. I always knew I would never stay in it forever. I said 10 years, and I would get going, but I had goals in mind that I wanted to hit before I left so I could, kind of like a Major League Baseball player retiring on their own terms.
Always good. Yeah.
Always great. Got really into the Hillary Trump stuff going on, the bathroom bill, which was just a huge chaotic moment for North Carolinians. When you try to designate someone's birth sex and things like that in bathrooms, it just was so chaotic. It was interesting to watch from a people watching standpoint. But,
I bet.
Kept growing my chops there and ended up in Greenville, South Carolina after, not to be confused with Greenville, North Carolina. Where again, I just really found myself in the middle of like national champions, like Clemson football, South Carolina women's basketball, and even the men's team went on a crazy run, and got to cover White House visits with Clemson, which there was fast food gate back then, and I was there for when then President Trump was feeding them Wendy's and pizza and things like that. I didn't get a single bite, which was kind of disappointing, but that was the last thing on my list. And the next thing I knew, an opportunity popped up to go work as a public information officer. If you're not familiar with that term, more or less a spokesperson for, a city, state, company. There's a lot of different variations, but public information officer is usually pretty standard for cities, states, and like counties, really that government sector side of things. Worked for the Greenville Police Department, helped with their media plan, because I'd worked there for almost 3 years. I knew every reporter, anchor, producer at every station. So I was always able to get us our coverage when needed. I knew how to pitch the reporters, what stations were looking for kind of what angle or maybe what piece of information. From there, I ended up being promoted to do communications for the entire city 2 weeks before the pandemic hit.
Oh, fun.
Which was wild because I barely knew any of my team members, hadn't met some of them. Worked out of a 10-story building by myself during that first almost year. Kind of got burned out on that, to be quite honest. It was kind of a rewarding but grueling experience, and lucked out and took a job with the state of South Carolina to work for the emergency management division, to cover everything from hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemic again, helped run pandemic site, the COVID vaccination site for the state of South Carolina for 3 months, 12 hours a day, which was just incredible to see everyone working together, no matter what side of the spectrum someone may be on if they're watching this. But just that dedication, that hard work every day was really cool. Tried the private sector, worked for a digital marketing agency in Charleston, South Carolina. Was not a fan, was not very rewarding. Came out to Arizona for a job, and I promised myself when I walked out of one of my jobs in South Carolina, I said, hey, the price that's, on my head, so to speak, with a contract or salary does not equal the price of happiness that's in me internally. And I just knew the job wasn't for me. So I quit and started the company overnight, really. And we can talk about that later, but that's kind of my background, almost a decade in news, about 4 years working on the city and state side of media pitching in a sense. And even on the private side with what I'm doing now, I just helped a client not too long ago go national.
This is where you're so unique, that you've done the work in the grind of the media, being in the media, you were the media, and you've also supported, a whole bunch of folks to basically get the media. And so you've learned both sides of it. And that's where it's one of the most common things I think people want to do is like, hey, I want to get on TV, or I want to get featured in X publication, on or offline. And, I feel like TV is that thing though, people's like, I want to be on TV to say I've been on there, or whatever it is. And there's a ton of value to it. And I don't know if like going into all the merits of that is really necessary here, but it's more like, hey, all right, what's the strategy behind getting media? Like, why in the first place? And, you have a really good perspective of this. And then what's the smart approach for entrepreneurs listening who, they can leverage the media in whatever way that they have based on the strategy, but it's like, how do you approach it now? 'Cause I feel like that's a pretty common thing is people approach the scenarios incorrectly. So I guess let's start what's the big idea? Like why even approach media? Why get media?
Yeah, I mean, it could be for a number of things. It could be you develop a product that's going to help a lot of people. Maybe you went viral for, interacting with a celebrity, or maybe you're trying to push a bill. Maybe you're a politician. There's just so many reasons. I mean, if you really turn on the news, sometimes it's just most random stuff. You're like, why are we covering this today? And it could be for one of those reasons. But, maybe you're a company and you're trying to get exposure for your product, or maybe your service, or maybe giving back to the community around you, despite maybe being like a Forbes recognized company. The why is really up to the company, the person, the entrepreneur. I mean, we all have some sort of moment in our life that should be covered, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to your personal why, maybe professional why. I guess maybe that could be twofold right there.
Yeah, I like that, and because I agree, like everybody has a book in them. There's something that makes us unique, our superpower, whatever you want to call it. But it's what's that thing after all the layers of other stuff that we kind of quote unquote have to do, or what's the get to do thing, and share it widely. And I would imagine, a big why is also, it's like, hey, you open the doors here, it could open up doors elsewhere and then expand that reach even further.
Yeah, it's free advertising in a sense, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And, with today's monopolies of the media, just because you air in Nowheresville, Louisiana, chances are that station's owned by a big company that owns 100 other stations. And what happens in most cases like that, you get picked up on other websites, at least, if not rolled on other stations too, that may be found it interesting. Maybe there's a local connection. You just never know.
What would your perspective be like if someone did have that thing they wanted to get out? Maybe it is a new book, maybe it's a cause or something they're looking for impact. Of course, there's regional, there's more nationwide, and all these. There's a whole structure that I'm probably totally unfamiliar with, but would TV or this type of media that you've been in, do you think that's a good place to start, or at least kind of practice a little bit here?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say any kind of positive spotlight you can put on yourself, your business, go for it. Even if it's a local publication, a lot of times in traditional broadcast media, in terms of what you're watching with your local affiliates, national affiliates, they have a couple hours that day to put together a story. It's not a whole lot of time, but those smaller publications, those print papers that are slowly dying are still very important. They get a lot of time to dive deep into stories. They're still very important. So always, cast a very big net. You cannot go wrong by even just being covered by a podcast, by a blog, something like that. And it'll start to build. You'll get noticed because a lot of these companies watch each other or read each other. So what happens in a lot of cases, one person will bite once, the other ones will watch, and usually within that week, if not couple weeks, if it does well, or if it shows maybe more than what you pitched to them in a sense, they'll call you, and then you're getting coverage, and then it grows from there. And as I mentioned, a lot of these little stations, these little publications are owned by a much bigger company, and they just kind of throw it all out to everyone in a sense. So, definitely do not put a box around yourself or the audience you want to reach. Now, if it's political, you obviously are not going to pitch to the opposite side usually, unless you're super brave.
Know your audience, or unless you have an angle there. Yeah.
Know your audience too. But be open to things. You never know what a door could open. And I've learned that the best ways this last, 7-8 months that I've been running my company is said yes to things I normally wouldn't say yes to. And they've been just like blessings in disguise. So I would say start with that and know your message. It's getting really tough in newsrooms to get coverage because newsrooms are really shrinking. You used to have a team of 20, 30 people, and now it's down to 10, if that in some cases. Some companies are moving away from even having a full newsroom in a city, like a state like Wyoming. The anchors are actually in Cheyenne, even though you think your news is coming from Casper. And that's becoming the norm slowly, just based on costs of really everything. And it's not a very financially stable business to be in. So a lot of people leave too. So there's that twofold. It's like people are leaving the business, not just left and right now. And then, they can't pay people in the business. So, we could see a pretty big shift in the next, decade or two of how your local news is viewed.
With that in mind, I'm curious because like it's the landscape's changing in media in general, and the fact that you're
Mhm.
saying this even on the local affiliate level, which makes a lot of sense in a small town like Casper, because that's where you spent some time, right? In Wyoming.
Spent 2 years there. We had a team of almost 20 people on both sides of the camera.
Yeah.
And by the time I left, that was already shrinking significantly. In a year or two after, it was down to pretty much a reporter, someone there to help in the background, and then the anchors were tossing to them from Cheyenne, which is,
Wow. Okay.
if I remember correctly, like 2.5 hours away.
And that was pre-COVID and all that.
That was probably 2013, 2014.
Wow. Okay.
And more stations are adopting similar methods, man. It's been wild. So yeah, media pitching is a very unique craft, and it requires just connection sometimes too.
I was gonna say it's definitely who is opens doors just in the world. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we chatted before this on a call right after when you were going back from San Diego, is like you definitely there's an approach to it. So
Yeah.
I feel like all right. We talked about the why, figure out your why, and everybody kind of can figure that out. And I think knowing the landscape of the media, like you just described, it's changing. It's been changing. I don't think most people understand how, satellites, all these networks kind of work. So it seems like there's regional hubs, and there's, of course, different types of publications within regions. There's national, there's podcasts, like you mentioned, blogs. I mean, that's all considered media. It's just different. So it's almost like know the landscape of, I guess, where you want to go. And I would imagine, because I want to get into pitching and some of these interesting strategies that I didn't think about.
This would be like kind of like a checklist, tool belt,
Cool.
whatever you want to call it. But in the old days, you could send a news release and you probably get some coverage or at least a phone call. You just can't do that anymore. Like I mentioned, newsrooms are shrinking. There's less resources to cover a variety of topics. We're more driven towards what's going viral or, unfortunately, who's dying that day. So that kind of gets, a lot of the attention, a lot of the focus. So you really got to stand out from all that, from the day of news, which is, something like the ship crashing into the bridge over in Maryland the other day. Things like that, where you can't predict them. They happen and they're going to get all the attention. So, I always say, still send the news release, which I know is kind of silly because I kind of said you can't just do that anymore. But the news release at least gets your name in front of someone's eyes. Make sure it's spell checked, make sure it looks good, it's clear, cut to the point. What you should do, and a lot of people don't do, because when you're talking about something visual and you're just putting it in words, it's hard to picture sometimes.
Yeah.
Call that news station, call that paper, call that blog, contact whoever you sent that to, and go down the list of everyone you've sent it to. And just say, hey, I would like to speak to your assignment editor, or is there a producer I can speak with? We just sent a news release. I want to make sure they got it and really explain what this is. And from there, there's a lot of things you can do. Again, make sure that that news release is as perfect as possible. And because they will push aside news releases that don't look good. There's a lot of spelling errors. They're just going to think you're not a credible source.
Got it.
But a good rule of thumb is that 4 to 6 weeks mark where you're hoping for coverage. Let's say it's an event, 4 to 6 weeks out, send that initial press release. Follow up with a call within 24 hours. And then also do not forget this word. This word will get you so much, will increase your chances of really getting coverage as demonstrative. Remember that D word, demonstrative. Call and say, hey, if your crew shows up, they get to do this. Your crew shows up, they get to see this. Or we're going to put them on a boat, or they're going to get to fire a big gun, or whatever it may be. I went to a story as a reporter to the ports in Savannah, and no one thought to ask, hey, can we actually drive one of these giant cranes that are like $12 million and just show us driving it? So me being me, Joe, I'm kind of about having fun. I joked. I was like, what do I got to do to drive one of these things? And the guy said, sign a waiver. And next thing I know, I'm the only reporter that has a shot of me driving this $12 million eco-friendly crane that I had no business operating, like a claw machine. But my station loved it. It was demonstrative. It showed more than just this crazy headline of Port is investing tens of millions of dollars into green friendly cranes.
That's huge. I mean, you're showing, it's like show and tell, right?
It's exactly show and tell.
You're showing the proof, and it's not just words or theoretical. You're in the seat, man.
But no one in that organization, as great as they were, as positive as they were to work with, thought to pitch that to a reporter.
Dang,
Reporter had to ask, which you feel bad about sometimes, for legal reasons, for personal reasons, whatever it may be. Again, do not forget demonstrative things like that. Even if you're just working in a lab or, you got an office, try to find some way to make it creative for someone to come by instead of just spraying up B-roll, as we call it. That will increase your chances so much more. Again, action.
Right before, I just want to go back really fast just to recap, and because I know you're giving us steps, and I'll just remind everyone, we'll try to make notes out of this, or we'll make it actionable. But just going to the very beginning, so news release, press release, same kind of thing, right?
Same thing. News release followed up with a phone call
to an assignment editor,
producer, whoever you can really get on the phone. And if you can't get a hold of those people, if you're really in tune with your local media, know which reporters cover what topics generally, and just send them a direct email, send them a tweet or an X, whatever they're called these days. That will get some attention too. I know I was more likely to look into a story if someone reached out to me directly as a reporter. And a lot of times the final call is up to the news director, the assignment editor, or whoever it may be that's in charge of those meetings. But it doesn't hurt you. It actually helps you one way or the other. Just say, oh yeah, I actually got an email. I looked into that. It looked pretty cool kind of thing.
I always love the personal touch anytime I'm reaching out to anyone, maybe it's someone to even have on my podcast, like a bigger name. And, it's pretty much what you just said. If you don't have their email, or even if you do, hit them up on social in the inbox. I do like X because still, and it's been for years, not a lot of people go to those DMs for some reason. They go to Instagram. I feel like it's lost in Instagram. Facebook, good luck. You got X. And then what I love to do too is use Loom, some kind of video where I can send and show my face in the email at least, but maybe on X. But at least in the email, like I like to put this little embed thumbnail.
Absolutely. Cool. And X is such a great platform for news attention. I mean, most of your reporters, that's the first thing they do. They don't go to their Facebook first. They're pushing things out on X first. And most people who are looking for their news are going to X.
Hey, I'm going to pause the episode really fast and shout out another show that's on the podcast network over at HubSpot. It's the audio destination for business professionals. This is Mistakes That Made Me. It's hosted by Iman Ismail. She is interviewing successful business owners and talking about, hey, what are those mistakes? What are the failures? What are the things that you hate to talk about that we can all learn from? I mean, let's be honest. Do you like to talk about your mistakes? Probably not. Well, that's what she's talking about. And it's going to be there. It is there waiting for you to listen so you can learn from those lessons and learn how to get past them or navigate around those big boulders on your own journey to success. So go listen to Mistakes That Made Me wherever you get your podcasts. Are you juggling multiple tools to run your online business? Well, thankfully, there is a better way, and it's called Kartra. So with Kartra, boosting your income has never been easier, and that's because it's the ultimate all-in-one platform for online success, offering every tool you need to grow your business. So imagine building pages, funnels, courses, autoresponders, and checkouts all in one place, and all for one affordable price. So the best part about Kartra is that you can automate just about everything. So it's like having a team of experts working around the clock to help you earn more. Now's the time to streamline and scale your business. Visit hustleandflowchart.com/Kartra for a free 30-day trial. That's hustleandflowchart.com/KARTRA. You were getting into timely stuff, right, with your pitch?
Yeah, and let's take the most recent thing that happened. Maryland, the port, and that ship crashing into that bridge, and just such an unlucky thing. I mean, that ship lost power, nothing it could do, couldn't steer. A lot of ports around the country, I don't want to say took advantage of that, but local reporters started calling them. So that's something that's timely. It's just because it doesn't impact you locally. If there's something similar, even thousands of miles away, you might get attention. So just be on the lookout, or call and offer, say, hey, we actually have safeguards at our port here, or whatever it may be, whatever the topic may be. Is it, are you doing cancer research? What kind of cancer is it? There's usually a week, a day, a month affiliated with most cancers these days. So make sure you're in the timeliness, but it's also good about following up, because you're not the only one that's probably pitching a similar topic during that. But most people don't follow up with those news releases and explaining what they can do.
Yeah, that's like follow-ups. I feel like a superpower if you can harness that and have a system for it. So it sounds like what you're describing, there's almost, I guess not newsjacking, trend jacking. I mean, kinda, right?
Newsjacking is an actual term.
Explain it.
It was something, it's where you literally do take the spotlight off of something good or bad, and just try to make it your own, in a sense. That was one of the things that we taught. I used to train public information officers when I worked for the state of South Carolina. That was one of the things we said, don't do. Now it's up to you to follow through with your duties if a reporter reaches out, or a member of the public reaches out and explain the information. But you can decide not to do the interview for those newsjacking reasons, especially with really sad events. And they happen all the time, unfortunately. So got to be careful. But to a company, that's an opportunity to get that free exposure, maybe get the word out about something. For instance, when we had all the shootings kind of blurred into one, but there was a shooting back in 2015, and a local company in Greenville where I worked had these life-saving kits that could have made a difference. And they were actually one of the companies that was brought in to that school, and the school said, "Nah, we don't need these." And the company was cool about it. They didn't really harp upon that. They didn't say, "Hey, we could have saved more lives," or whatever it may be, because you just don't know in those situations either. But they had a reason to really reach out. So be careful about newsjacking. It could be taken one way or the other. Most times it's not really affiliated with the term newsjacking.
And I was thinking there's a lot of positive stuff as well. I know we look at the news, and there's definitely a lot of negative and things, and maybe that's because of attention. Who knows? That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But when you have something great, like you said, cancer, there's Cancer Awareness Month. There's other maybe positive stories or developments, and it's like, hey, you can piggyback off of that if it's not always positive, but awareness. I think that's more positive than like a shooting or something. But let's be honest,
it's really one of those situations when it comes to media pitching. It's so every situation is different, every reason is different, obviously. So it's hard to touch upon that without having weeks to talk about.
For sure.
If not longer.
So is there anything that you would avoid when it comes to pitching, like a hardcore, like, don't do that, don't be like that?
Make sure everything is done with a positive mindset, not trying to tear down another company, another person. You see that a lot in politics, obviously, with ads that run. And make sure you're not doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're just trying to make millions, chances are it's not going to work out for you anyway. If you have an actual good reason to be covered, that just happens to make you millions, that's one thing. But if your sole reason is that money, people are going to see right through you. As a reporter, I would say no to stuff because I'm like, this person's just trying to make a buck. They don't really care about helping people, and that's not one of my reasons. That wasn't my why for being a reporter at the time. And so do it with the right intentions. Be genuine. Right intentions and genuine, those are your two keys.
I feel like every human responds better that way anyway. So it's like, think long term, long game, Yep. Awesome. All right. So anything else, I guess, on that pitching side of things?
Absolutely. And this was something I would see all the time, was they would send a news release. They wouldn't follow up, anything like that, but we would call them. And then they're like, oh crap, what do we do now? They're like, wait a minute, you want to do the story today? Understand, when you send that news release, there's a good chance if you get coverage, it's going to be same day. Even if it's something that's weeks in advance, they'll want to do a preview story, or maybe that's the only day that they have someone available. And they're like, hey, we actually are going to be down a couple crew members because of vacation, whatever it may be during your actual event, but we'd love to give you some coverage. So a media plan should be part of your tool belt, your checklist. have at least 2 people designated to speak to the media and both equally as educated on that topic or event or whatever's in that media release. Make sure they know it front and back. Obviously have your priority spokesperson, and then kind of sub priority, because accidents and emergencies happen all the time. I've had people had to try to cancel interviews because their wife went into labor and they had to go, but you didn't have a backup. So then they don't get their coverage. Right. And that's why I always tell them, like, if you don't do it today, there's a good chance it may not ever happen. You know, I have a perfect example of this. Was a couple of weeks ago, I helped a $50 million Forbes recognized company get coverage with a local affiliate that led to national exposure. Nice. And initially we were told we get a couple weeks before that business reporter would show up. Well, business reporter got thrown into something else and was going to be focused on that for the next couple of weeks. So the general assignment reporter was like, can you do the interview today? So, you know, because I had walked this company through probably a couple of days in advance before that pitch, they weren't necessarily on board right away, but they're like, okay, we'll do it. You know, the owner was like, well, I need a haircut. And I was like, well, do you have a hat with a logo? He goes, yeah, throw the hat on. You'll be fine. You'll forget about your hair and you'll focus on the questions. Smart. And it went great. So just be prepared for those interviews. So have that media plan in place. Where are they going to do it? Is there any private information up on walls that people shouldn't see? Generally, if you tell a reporter, hey, like, this is what we got to work with, you know, I'd really appreciate for these reasons, if you try to blur this out, or maybe can we shoot it at an angle where we don't see it? They're going to understand. You'd be surprised the reasons why people they didn't want something aired. And I was very understanding. I'm like, yeah, I don't want you to lose business, or yeah, I don't want you to get sued.
Yeah.
So have that plan in place, have the place you want to do the interview in mind already, and just be ready. I mean, they could call that day, they could call weeks later, but that's also a good reason why you should follow up, so you don't kind of get caught off guard, and maybe you get a good idea of when you might get some coverage.
Nice. Okay, that's great to know, and it reminds me of when Heather, my wife, she got on the news here locally, and it was for wedding planning, and it happened to be right at the beginning of COVID, so it was like, well, before it was a thing, but she still got her coverage, but it was just like, hey, what's this COVID thing that's coming around? And it was like early days. But I just remember it was so rushed. It was like, yeah, I think maybe they gave her a heads up of the day before, night before. But either way.
And that's good these days. I mean, if you get 24-hour notice, that is unheard of, because usually, like I said, most things are day outs, and they get a couple hours to interview you, shoot things, edit things, put it together, go on air. And take a deep breath before, so people don't understand how just fried they were for that day.
Man. Yeah. Well, it was KUSI, so, you know, they do things, I don't know.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Are they not around anymore?
No, KUSI is, but I believe that gentleman just passed
I know.
away, a couple years
Coleman,
ago.
I think. Yeah. Jerry Coleman.
Yes. Just a pioneer, really.
Jerry
but
Coleman.
Yeah, you know, so you've done your pitch, you've sent your release, you followed up, you know, and you kind of have an idea, you know, maybe they say we just can't be there.
Yeah.
That's when you have a media kit ready. And then most reporters and stations want to shoot their own stuff, and you're going to hear them say that probably. But if they just can't be there, at least maybe you could get on their website. So when you provide that stuff, they're more likely to put it on their website. Like, oh yeah, you got some B-roll we can use that's approved. Cool.
That's smart.
And then that web story, like I mentioned, a lot of these stations are owned by one big company, you know, like a set of 50 stations is owned by like Gray, someone like that. So then when it gets pushed out on one, it generally gets pushed out on every single one of them. And if it does well on the web, a lot of stations every morning, the people in charge of making those decisions, what's going to be covered that day, go to the website numbers, the analytics, what's clicking, who's on what, how long have they been hanging out there, what's getting the most interest. And that's what's decided for their A, B, C, D, and E blog for their shows for the day sometimes. I have pitched very reporter-oriented, well thought out stories, and I've been pushed to a viral cat. You know, like you just never know. But having that media kit ready, and chances are they don't want to use it if they can be there. But it's always good to have, and make sure it's well shot. Invest money into it if you can. You don't invest a whole lot. There's a lot you can do with an iPhone these days. Um, and that would be it. I mean, it's pretty simple, but those are the little things people don't generally
Yeah.
do. But when they did it, I was more apt to at least call them and try to set something up. You have to be understanding of day of events that just happen when they do. And if you're doing all that and it seems to not be working, try to get in on the morning shows, like especially if you are in a big city where they have weekend morning shows. A lot of times they're struggling to fill those
Really?
guest
Okay.
spots in a sense.
Yeah, it seems like that's a trend. Like you get the morning shows, they all kind of look the same. But yeah, you could probably
Yeah.
study a format and be like, all right, I'm going to go for that kind of angle.
Yes, and that gets your connection going. It really is about who you know. And there's reasons why, like for my business per se, I don't do media pitching all the time because some of my businesses that I work with aren't in areas where I have connections, and I know how much easier it is when you have those inner connections.
Yeah.
So find a way to get in those actual stations, shake some actual hands, put a face to a name, reach out to the reporters that cover the topics that you like, or the publications or the podcasts. And if that's not working, that's when you get to the point where you go, maybe I need to hire someone that does this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you're at that point, if it's not working, there's something that is just not clicking. And if you really want that coverage, feel you deserve that coverage, that's when you throw out some money, unfortunately. But what you'll get in return will be far greater, and it'll get easier and easier because you'll be a face to a name. You'll build that relationship, and maybe you'll be the wedding person. Yeah. Maybe you'll be the lead on driving stories. Like you wouldn't believe how important in smaller markets stories like car maintenance during winter are, and every station has that one place they go to do the interviews because they know they're going to say yes. They know they're going to be good because they've worked with them over the years. So yeah, build those relationships. Try to schedule a tour. That would be my last resort, is schedule a tour as a company, just to get in there and maybe do some internal pitching.
Oh, like actually at the news station itself, and then
yep.
Okay, interesting.
That's a last ditch effort because they're tough to do these days. The security has gone up for obvious reasons. Yeah. In stations, and some stations are good about it. Some stations say, no, we don't want any strangers in here.
Well, show me a FaceTime tour or something, like get me in there somehow.
Yeah, give you something.
I got it.
Yeah.
Brandon, this is awesome, dude. And I think of another way to extend this, I would imagine, is HARO, HARO, like help a reporter out. I'm sure some of this pitching can translate that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one, Quoted, is one that some teams I've worked on. There's this gal on one of them, her name's Alana. She's a badass. She's works for Kimmy Seltzer, one of my clients, and she's all over the media. Like, and every single day, I think she's on HARO and Quoted, QWOTED, and it's similar to what you're saying. And she's getting local coverage. There's national coverage on certain shows, published on online shows. There's a lot of these types of networks, I guess, have been created online that kind of model the local.
Yeah, and online is super important. Like I said, even if you're just getting on web stories, that's very important. I worked for a station where briefly our Facebook numbers just greatly overshadowed our actual air numbers. And so they tried to do Facebook shows. And there are other stations that I know who have tried to do that where, it's like a 3:30 Facebook show or something. Sure. So you just never know. So, be open to maybe the media pitch not looking the way you wanted, but you still get some sort of coverage. Yeah, and then just, follow up with those people when you do get that coverage and build those relationships. That's really what it comes down to. Are you going to say yes? Are you going to be a good interview? Are you relevant?
And are you going to help them out? Yeah, help a reporter out. It's literally what it's named. So, dude.
Yeah.
I love this, man. So tell me briefly about Super Bloom, what you're doing there, because I know you've now, this is it's only been a handful of months, but I mean, like, I know you're crushing. You're already freaking booked to the seams, because it's obviously necessary. So quick shout out how people can reach out to you as well.
Yeah, we do have, I'm actually kind of lined up right now where, I'm not actively really looking for more clients yet. I'm a team of 3 right now. I'm officially a team of 3 as of about a week ago. I'm about to be a team of 4 and bring on a marketing assistant. I have a lot of, after 10 years in the spotlight, I'm very private about my personal life. I have a lot of great things going on in my personal life that are requiring time away. So, I know I need to bring on some help and get a good infrastructure in place before I start going, go here, go there. But, we do have Instagram, we do have Facebook, we have website, Super Bloom Digital Consulting. Again, go to it. You're going to go to it and see that I'm not actively pitching for people. But I've been really blessed, man. Super Bloom itself comes from a lot of personal reasons. A lot of, I've been legally employed since 6th grade, and I learned a lot of my work values from my grandmother in the garden. Some of those phrases I can't say because they're not family friendly, but I hold in the heart. There's a song called Super Bloom by a band called Mr. Wives that really got me through the pandemic. It's just a beautiful song about, going through some stuff. And when, the pandemic hit and the world shut down, this was like the first band to put out an album. It was kind of like, no one's going to put out new music at this time, but they did it anyway. And they had just been fired from the label and all that. I just really liked their story of soldiering through. I was working in a 10-story building fighting the pandemic with my city at the time. And it was tough. And then when I drove into Arizona for the first time, the Super Bloom was going on. So, Super Bloom itself came from an idea of family, just being musically motivated as I am. And that personal experience of coming into Arizona and going, oh my God, it is gorgeous here. And also, there's the SEO side of things. Twice a year, Super Bloom's one of the most searched words.
Oh, is it really?
Because it happens twice a year. It is. And, the Super Bloom's, it's happening right now. I'm getting hits from all over, and I'm like, please don't reach out to me. I don't have the time for you, and I'm getting ready to go on vacation next week and all that. But
it's funny.
It's been fun to be an entrepreneur. It's unlike anything I've ever done. It's the most challenging, but also the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I moved out here, didn't have a whole lot of connections. After I left my job, that wasn't anything that clicked in my head. I said, I'll get a job right away. I landed a lot of interviews. I said no to some jobs, but at the end of the day, over 30 jobs told me, we really liked you. You're a finalist, but we went with someone we knew. So I sat there one day and my own Super Bloom kind of happened. I said, what am I good at? Because I can't compete with people that already have these established connections. As we mentioned, those connections are very important. I said networking was number one. So I started networking, joined a B&I group, went to social media marketing world, talked to everyone I possibly could. And wrote down the other list. I'm good with video. I'm good with photography. I can edit much quicker than most people just because of my setup and all that. So, being an entrepreneur is crazy. I never thought I would do it. When we were trudging through Camp Pendleton, I said, I'm going to make music for my life.
I thought so too, man.
Be a radio DJ. And in a way, I think you talked about hustle and that flow chart of your life. I do a lot of things musically, whether go to concerts, I write music, I play guitar for that stress release, work out a lot. Being ADHD, you have to keep your energy level as even keel as possible, which is really tough sometimes. Diet's really important. To my fellow entrepreneurs, I would say, dude, you're going to do it. Just do the damn thing. That was the best piece of advice I got from social media marketing world was do the damn thing. If you're scared, you got to jump over and just try. If you don't try, you'll never know. And it's just been such a blessing. And, I really lucked out with my clients. I would say, don't be desperate for your clients. I know we're here for media pitching, but, one bad weed can ruin the whole garden. Not to go on flower puns, but, it's been wonderful. And to see what you've been doing as well has been really cool, and to really catch up on the last couple of decades and really see what you're doing has been awesome. Exposing people and having your adorable family, which you guys fought so hard for, which has just been incredible to see. And it's such a beautiful thing because you guys are such good parents.
Man. We all have our own fight, and I think you get some cool stuff coming up too. I won't release anything here. Keep private for now.
I appreciate it.
So, yes. But superbloomdigitalconsulting.com, and check them out on all the socials. Yeah, I love the whole Super Bloom analogy. I mean, there's so many. It's deep.
Your company needs to mean something to you, and as someone who's ADHD, and I really pride myself on that. That a lot of people kind of keep quiet about it. I was always very self-aware in other places I work because I was like, I feel different, but I know it's not really a disability in a sense, and it's not. But we're very prone to hyper-focused hobbies in a sense, where you go into something and then you get bored, right? So I sat there and said, how do I make this sustainable? And I said, what matters to me in my life? And I said, my family, my faith, and the people that support me. And so for me, I had to come up with a name that meant more. And it had to be even in the style. It's kind of cartoony, and I'm kind of wacky in a sense, but I'm also professional at the same time. So, I got that logo designed the way I wanted it to. And I was like, that's it. That's my why every single day. And I think about my list of people that represent Super Bloom, and just, the struggles and the successes I've had over all these years. And just like anyone, we have a lot of them, on one side of the spectrum, the other. So every day I wake up, I recite who this is for and what is it for and my why. And that's what motivates me every morning. Get up and, do it. Do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. There's no better advice out there, man. Because let your freak flag fly. Build the airplane in the sky. Whatever. All these damn things. Like,
be brave.
So true.
Be brave. I mean, and we're our worst critics. And I'm really great at creating other people's social media plans. That's something else we do. And my own social media plan is kind of, when I have time. And so it doesn't really represent what we're able to do.
That's it, man.
So when you go to all those channels and you're judging, go for it. Just understand that I could either be doing my own stuff or I could be helping you.
I mean, it's another analogy is the cobbler's kid's shoes. It's like, they look like crap. It's like he's busy fixing other people's stuff. So, no. Yep. You rock, dude. So thank you so much. And we'll make it actionable. I might put it in the email or we'll figure out a way, but definitely keep an eye on things. And I appreciate you, man. And this video, if you're watching on YouTube, all that stuff, definitely consider subscribing and follow Brandon on all the socials. I'm sure we'll be doing this again. I'm sure we'll be seeing you around as well, man, because it's the beginning of great things.
Vice versa, because I do have a podcast in the works.
All right.
Not the near future, but you've inspired me to get into it a little bit, and just building that connection. And, as entrepreneurs, we succeed together. Yep. So I really like what you do, and exposing people, because if we all win together, it's kind of my phrase. So thank you for your time, Joe. You've been phenomenal as usual. I'm not surprised. We can't wait to see how this turns out.
Man. All right. Appreciate you, bro.